Hey guys, we have been so excited because we have so many people write in with topic requests, but we want more. So DM us, email us, just reach out to us. Let us know about topics you want us to talk about because we want to hear from you because their goal here is to build a community. So please reach out. Thanks and hope you enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, this is Daisy here.
Hey guys, it's Sophie, and welcome to episode 6. So today we're going to be talking about a situation that a listener wrote in to us, where she's kind of explaining something really tough that she's going through, and this is something I think a lot of people can resonate with and understand
Within the LGBTQ plus community.
Right, and I think, or even on a larger level, like the concept of dealing with unaccepting parents who are just not seeing you for who you are,
Right.
and in her case, having to be in that same proximity as them at a younger age, right?
And having a reliance on parents, financially, emotionally, and them saying, unless you do exactly what we tell you to do, this is conditional.
Yeah. And so just to break it down, to give by way of background so you can get to know our listener. So she wrote into us, she explained to us that she just graduated college. She's studying for the MCAT, but she's studying at home with her parents. And she has a girlfriend, but her parents do not accept her girlfriend. And I think unacceptance can look very differently. And I think it's important to kind of explain, what does that look like for her, right? So for her, this means that her parents are telling her that you can't see your girlfriend. And if you see your girlfriend, we're cutting you off financially. And if you go live and move with her, we're cutting you off financially. So she has a real threat here of financial stability. That's very different than I think a lot of other situations where it's more easy to just get up and leave, because you don't, for all of us, everyday life, we need money, right? We need that. And I think when you have that tie to your family, it makes it extra hard. So that's kind of what she's going through. And she just wrote to us with a few questions, and maybe we can just take it piece by piece by each question and try to just answer them.
Yeah. I want to bring up the first question here. She asked us, how do you heal and feel better when the people inflicting the pain don't want to talk or acknowledge what they're doing? Next question, how do you get over the haunting feeling that they may not realize or even care that they are hurting you the way that they are?
Yeah, I mean, this is very, very hard to be living in a house where she gets up every day. There's this part of her that's not being seen.
Right.
It's not being acknowledged. Not only is it not being acknowledged, but it's getting dismissed and it's getting rejected, and that takes a toll on you.
Right. Well, that's the place where you're spending all of your time. That's what's getting reflected back to you. You're not having the space to be able to exercise who you are, and that can be detrimental to your sense of self.
Definitely. And I think it's hard enough. The situation's hard enough in and of itself. But when you're living at home with your parents and she's in this place where she's graduated school and she doesn't have enough money yet, where she has a full-time job, she's trying to go to med school. And I think another key component she mentioned to us is that she viewing med school now as a way to escape and finally have this freedom, this life that she wants. And it's kind of tainting the way that she views med school.
Right.
And this is concerning to her because she wants to be able to go to med school out of that passion she had and not out of the fear to basically escape her parents.
Right. And I think that is something, and we can get into this later, but being able to have that level of awareness to say, my parents living with them, when they don't accept this, it's having a detriment on my aspirations, on how I want to go about my future. And that's a very real side effect of living in this situation. It's very difficult. So, and thinking of ways to go about living with your parents in this situation, I think it's finding ways to get out of the house and find spaces where you can go bring your full self to.
Right. I think it's easy to feel like when you're surrounded by someone else's energy who's rejecting you, that to feel like that is the only energy that you can feel. And it's really hard to find space for yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Even in a house, if it could be a 1-story, 2-story ranch-sized house, it fills up the energy with the family who's in there, and you're going to feel timid or scared, or, it's not going to feel accepting. So that has an effect on how you feel. So I think finding a community that you can go be a part of, whether that's like Tuesday night this, or, going and finding a coffee shop, it's finding a community outside of your house to make you feel comfortable in.
Yeah, but I guess in this situation, I don't know if she has a community near her. So I don't know if she like lives in a suburbs where she.
Right.
So I think every
Right.
situation is different. Like if for us, like we live in Brooklyn, we can go and hang out with people. I'm not close to my family, but like if I went to go live in my house, like I would be I would feel more suffocated. I think one thing that that really helped me when I was going through this is the recognition that like my feelings are so valid, even if I'm in this house of people who do not see or agree with them. And I think that this recognition kind of helps you to give yourself that validation, because she's not getting validation right now from her parents, and that is so hard.
It is. Yeah. And you want to replace that elsewhere. So it's difficult. You don't know where she lives or like where the community area is around there. So that, going online, I don't know, like maybe being able to find people to talk to online about this.
Right. I mean, she did find the podcast, and I think she did say it's been very helpful for her. And it is helpful to gain that validation, to recognize that so many people are going through this.
Right.
You're not alone. She's not alone. And that, I think, takes a level of like the pain is kind of shared among this community, that like we have all experienced probably some level of, the pain that's inflicted when you're either coming to terms with your sexuality or coming out. And knowing that she has these resources, are people who do care for her and love her, and like who do see her for who she is. And one day she will be able to fully immerse into that freedom of sense of identity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one aspect of this question that we do want to talk about is just knowing that this is going to come to an end. You're not going to live with your parents forever. You're going to be able to go and flourish at a point in time. But right now, when that is not an option in this very moment, it's like, how do you navigate being with them and being yourself, but also trying to mend your relationship, but also setting boundaries with them to say, I'm not changing who I am, and not doing that in a way that's dissatisfying to them. Not even dissatisfying, but saying, hey, I'm not changing. I love you, but this is who I am.
Yeah. I think that emotions play a huge role here, because our emotions in these extreme situations, in my experience, my emotions took over me. You feel these feelings you've never felt before, of this rejection and this hopelessness feeling that is such a strong hopelessness feeling, of feeling like my life is never going to get better. And I think that like having to handle those feelings, it's very hard to kind of see where the people who are hurting you are coming from. And I think that sense of separation and division that then grows, and the resentment that then builds, it kind of grows beyond what the original fight was about. And just to give by way of example, with my parents, when I told them and I was so mad at them, it became not even that they weren't accepting me anymore, but it built and kept building this resentment towards them. And it got larger and larger, because I created this story in my head, which was accurate, that my parents, they didn't care about me, and they hated me, and they didn't want me to be happy, and just very, very hard to hold this idea of like the parents who are supposed to love and care about you are not seeing and actually loving you. So I asked myself so many times, right? Like, are they bad people? Like, I feel like I always asked you, like, are they bad people? And the answer was, I did later realize, was no, they're not bad people.
And I want to pause and ask a question of what helps you get to this place of not resenting them. Would you say like early on you were able to communicate with your parents that you were really, really hurting, and you really opened up and were vulnerable and cried with them?
No. I mean, I like the first probably like year, I could not even like tell them that I was upset. I think like I was so angry, and I didn't know how to communicate those feelings to them, and I thought that they wouldn't ever see me, and I was just so mad about it, and I had a hard time handling. Those are really big emotions to handle.
They are really, really big emotions.
So naturally, my guard went up, and I was defensive. I was mad. I couldn't go and talk to them without like yelling at them, and even when I wasn't yelling, I was just creating this narrative. They're very evil people. They're bad people, because why would anyone in the world want to make their child feel shitty?
Right. And you have to think, while you were creating these narratives, they were also creating. I want to back up. You weren't creating narratives. You were extending what they had said. They had said some really terrible things to you.
This is where it gets really confusing.
It does get very confusing, because at the point I'm trying to make is that your parents are creating all these narratives in their head, and you are here trying to comprehend all of these things that they said to you on your own.
I'm trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's what it all comes down to. You are the child, and as a child, you spent your whole life listening to what your parents had to say to you. They raised you. They brought you into this world. They are your source of guidance. So naturally, we take everything they say to be factual. We believe everything they say.
Right.
And that's where a lot of this pain comes from, is the recognition, is the thought process that what they're saying is factual.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, if my parent telling me, hey, Sophie, like, you're sinning, this is so selfish of you because you have a girlfriend, I'm going to say, oh my God, like, they're right. Number one, they're right. Number
Right.
two, they must actually really believe that because they just want to hurt me. And I think for me, it was that second part of being like, wait, this doesn't make sense. Why would my parents want to hurt me?
Mm-hmm. And that's a process. And you did get to a point where you had been able to process your own emotions. It took you a long time to be able to process these really big emotions on your own, but you were able to do it. And I think by allowing yourself to do that, you eventually got the courage to express to your parents, like, this is how I feel.
Well, I think when in the processing of emotion kind of comes two steps, right? It's like, so we'll take the feeling of like anger, for example. My parents are angry at me and I'm angry at my parents. You have anger on a larger level of we're both holding this feeling. But when you separate it and you realize, okay, there's my anger and there's my parents' anger, where are they both coming from? For me, the anger is like, I'm angry because I feel like I'm not being seen, I'm not being heard, I'm not being loved.
Right.
So why are my parents angry, right? Like, why? And that's where the question gets really deeper of like, because they are so scared. Like, I realized that my parents were terrified. My parents were like, all of a sudden, seeing the possibility that their child would potentially be living this really hurtful, scary life, that they were told their entire life that being gay was a sin. Being gay, if you were gay in America or in the world, you would get I don't know, like
it was worse than, being a pedophile.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
It was.
Or it was equal to that. So that's what they were brought up understanding or being told.
Yeah, and in certain religions, I mean, it's just you are like, in a way, you're brainwashed, you're conditioned to think that this thing is so bad. So naturally, when you find out that your child can potentially now be affiliated with all these terrible things that you once heard of, you can't separate to recognize that as a parent. I don't think you can separate to have the recognition that like, this is not, it's my kid is not choosing this is just who they are, because they were taught that being gay is a choice and being gay is a sin and being gay is something that people just are people who are messed up. It's just like their brain is messed up.
Right.
Like, this is literally what they were taught.
Right. And I think what happened is, as you were able to, this is over a longer period of time, 1.5 years, as you were able to, one, digest these big emotions, and two, express it to them and not feel like you have to retract who you are when you're around them, you were also able to show them that you were living a happy life and take some of that fear away from them. And at least from your mom, who is very much starting to get involved in our life a little bit. She no longer cares, it seems like, because she's not afraid anymore. She's not afraid anymore. Happy you are. She sees that she thinks I'm nice. And that's the beauty of it. You removed the lens of fear from your mom.
Right. And the reason
she sees pride flags now, and she thinks of them differently.
And the reason that this happened, and this is so important, is the vulnerability aspect of, I know on one end of it, you have to protect yourself and you really do have to take that space. But on the other end of it is, while also looking out for your emotions, you have to also, I think, be vulnerable with your parents. You have to express your feelings to them. And like, I just tell them, hey, like, I cried to my mom so many times and I was like, I feel so hurt right now. And when I put my guard down, guess what? She responded back with love. I think not every parent is going to respond that way, and not every situation is going to be that way. But what happened to me is I recognized that I was finally showing my parents, instead of having my guard up and yelling at them and throwing things, I was showing them the pain that I was feeling. And this allowed me to kind of like, I was feeling my emotions, and then the resentment towards them lessened because I wasn't going home and like holding in my feelings. I started showing them everything was on the table here. Yeah. They knew how I was feeling, and that kind of helped to, in a way, like take away any sort of like holding in I felt I was doing.
Did that feel validating that like this almost became a family conversation? I don't want to jump to say like it's a full family conversation with your family, but because you don't talk about it with your entire family. But do you feel like now that you can talk about me at home and your mom will ask you questions, like does it feel more validating now that you started to express your feelings around this with them?
Yeah, I mean, definitely now that like I can go home and like, but even with my dad, I can't really like, I don't bring you up, but
Right.
still being able to like say it to my mom. But this took progress. This took like a year and a half for this to
Right,
happen. But I
right.
think the point here is that when you express your emotions to them and you let that guard down, that vulnerability shows, I think the resentment kind of lowers in a way because you're starting to not only show them your feelings, but maybe you're starting to think about like, the way that they're suffering too, the way that they're struggling too. And I think you have to be cautious the way that you talk about this because we're not
Right.
excusing their
Right.
actions.
Yeah.
We're not saying what they're doing is right. And I think for the longest time I struggled with like, okay, I don't want to excuse my parents, but I also have sympathy for them because for them, in their eyes, they see this to be like the biggest like fear that they've ever had in
Right.
life.
It's difficult because like you said 100% this is not fair to you that you are being treated this way by the person who decided to raise you and bring you into this world. It's not fair, but you do have to look at it and say I want to move forward with these people. They are human beings that I love and care about, want them in my life. So once you are able to understand how you're feeling about this and understand your emotions and meet those needs in a way that you feel like you're moving forward with them, like you feel, I don't know, it's like it's not linear. You feel great some days, you feel awful some days, you feel whatever.
But you
other
can also
days.
feel like you're moving forward with them, even if they're not moving forward. And I think that
Yeah.
that was a really big realization for me is like, I've talked about this a lot of the feeling of like, I shifted the goal with them. Like the goal was not to have them say, okay, good morning, Sophie, we accept your relationship. It was rather for like, my mom to slowly stop saying such negative things to me,
Right.
and for me to slowly start feeling better, like expressing my emotions to my parents. And I stopped looking to the external validation to see progress, but I looked for just me. Like, how was I feeling? I finally felt better about my relationship. I felt better, less internalized homophobia as like the days and weeks went on. And that to me was the growth I needed. And that kind of reflected on a larger level what the growth was here. Even if my parents were at the same place.
So even though your parents weren't necessarily growing with you at the same pace, you're growing with yourself. And maybe for every 10 steps you take, they're taking a step.
Right.
Or half a step.
And also like kind of like making my expectations in a way that realizing that me expecting things with my parents, like in those moments that it kind of like, it made sense that things were kind of messed up, right?
It does. Yeah. I want to say something because I don't want to forget it. I think it's really important to acknowledge that we think our parents, I think you hit on this earlier, we think they know everything. We think that they are the ones that are the infinite knowledge. And as we get older and we become adults, we see that they are just adults like us. They don't know everything.
They're just human beings like
right,
us.
Right. So that's why humans. And that's why I think it's so difficult in these scenarios. It's like when your parents say it's not okay for you to be gay or, be in the same-sex relationship, whatever the situation is, when they say it's not okay, it's really hard to grapple with because you feel like you're getting the ultimate no, it's not okay from someone whose validation you need. And I think the misconception with that is children and kids and young adults like are very smart and in touch with who they are, and a lot of the times by them leaning into who they are and feeling really confident in it and setting boundaries and saying I'm going to be this person even if you don't agree with that, a lot of the times parents might say, okay, like I don't agree with you, and time will pass and they say I actually respect what you did and I learned from you because this is not something that I'd experienced in my life. And I think that it's important to say that parents can learn from you when you set your boundaries because parents don't always know everything.
Definitely. And I think it's also like in a way like you and like our listener right now is experiencing this new situation in her life at the same time her parents are like, so they're both going through this situation for the first time together. So her parents are going to learn from her, right? They're going to learn about the situation through the lens of the way that their daughter experienced it through the world. And they're going to see how happy their daughter is. They're going to see that their daughter is just like everyone else's child, that their daughter is going to become an amazing doctor and do amazing things in this world. And they're going to see that this fear that they had actually is going to crumble, and it's not going to have the same meaning that it once did, because for the first time they're going to see that their own child, who they do love so much, this is not about love. Like her parents love her so much, and if they didn't love her, they might not even care to even take the time to be mad and express their opinions. The reason why our parents care, the reason why our parents are so overbearing about us, because they care and they project onto us. They want us to live these certain ideals, these certain life, right? That is out of love. It's not, maybe they shouldn't parent that way, but that is out of love, the way that they love you, right? And I just go back to what I was just saying. I think that with time, since it is new for them, since you are both experiencing at the same time, there is that room for their brains to change, their brains to adapt, their brains to see that, oh, this is what it actually looks like now for my daughter to have a girlfriend.
Right. The phrase just came to mind of you don't know what you have until it's gone. I think that's an important phrase to bring up, because sometimes people assume certain expectations from you, and when you're always there, it's harder for them to change what their expectations are.
Yeah.
And if you take yourself out of the scenario and say, you can't expect this from me anymore, they're going to start to miss you, and they're going to start to try to understand why you left, and they're going to try to understand, what is she feeling? What is she going through? I think that's what really causes people and parents to grow and to help understand who you are. And I know one of the questions here was, do I take the leap, and do I take the risk of being financially cut off from my parents and go live happily, freely with my girlfriend, or do I financially stay safe and stay with my parents, but have the crippling feeling like I can't be myself when I'm at home?
And I just read her question specifically. She said that my heart tells me that I should leave, and my head tells me to be cautious and to save for financial security. Leaving home feels scary and risky, but at what point does living freely and happily outweigh the risk? And just for context, she would be here for another 2 years until she gets into med school. So that's a long time, right? I think that this situation is a difficult one, because I think there's obviously a fear that if she leaves, she doesn't. That's the unknown. That's the uncertainty. What if her parents never talk to her again? That's of course where your brain goes, right?
Right, of course.
I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I don't say this lightly, because this is a very scary situation, but where my mind goes right now is, in this situation, I think you have to have perspective on it. I think when you're very much in the situation, it's hard to have perspective. So I want to help bring some perspective to this, and think of when you're 90 years old and you look back, what would you have wished that you'd done? Because this, believe it or not, this very difficult, painful situation that is happening right now, it's a very small part of the grand scheme of your entire life. Yeah. If you ideally are going to be here for 80, 90 years, this is less than a quarter. This is a very small amount of time compared to that. So ultimately, this decision, it's going to lead you to go one path or the other. And maybe they wouldn't be that different in the end. Maybe they wouldn't. I'm not one to say, but I think it's just important to think, maybe even in 15 years, looking back, what was it worth it? And I think something that, Sophie, you bring up sometimes is something that helped you when you were realizing to choose your life, to live your life for yourself and not live your life for your parents, is you said that one day my parents, sadly enough, they're not going to be here. And what am I going to have lived my life for them? Am I going to keep living my life for them once they're gone? And I think that's a really impactful thing, because
it's hurtful. Like,
it's a reminder, you can't live life for anyone else, even your parents.
Yeah. And obviously, we all love our parents, even no matter what you're going through with your parents, like the love is still there. And of course, when your parents pass away, like, it's still gonna hurt. You're still gonna miss them. Like, they brought you into this world, and no one wants to think about that, but I think that is the reality here, of realizing that, like, they will one day not be here. So that gives you that perspective to think about, okay, I'm gonna be stuck with me. So what would I have wanted? Like, think back to like your old. Sometimes I like to think back to like my older self. I think it was like Tara Brach, one of her podcasts. There's this meditation where you get in touch with. I think you envision your future self, and it's like I remember the meditation kind of like your future self is like hugging you or talking to you and telling you like you're gonna be okay, and you kind of get that wisdom from them to know that that inner self is always that higher self is always within you. Like that voice that you get
Right.
in the meditation of like, oh, I used to envision like my 40-year-old self, like living comfortably in this life, like with my wife, presumably. And that like wisdom would come over me. And I'd realize that wisdom is within you. You're just allowing yourself to access it. And I think that our listener can access that and she can really, and whether this is through like meditation or really just sitting with her feelings, she can find out what she wants. And I think that her heart, like she said, her heart wants to leave. Her heart wants to be happy.
Right.
Her the fear of financial instability or the risks that comes with it is telling her to stay. But I think she has her answer.
I know. I think she does too.
I think that she knows what she needs right now. Sometimes like getting what you need is going to be hurtful, but that pain is going to be filled back with so much joy and happiness.
Right.
More so in a way than you're going to end up feeling more happiness in a way sometimes than pain. It's just kind of the way that it works out. And it's not that the pain doesn't go away. And it's this illustration I've seen before of like you have the black circle of the pain with grief or anything. And then
Right.
the happy feelings start growing, the happy colors start growing around the black, and before you know it, you have like seven other really bright colors, but you only have one black circle. And
see, what you're saying is that while this is like a very painful thing that she's experiencing, that as she starts to take these strides and these risks, that's going to be joyous of a return to her, is that she starts to create new, larger, better feelings and emotions that are going to eventually overshadow these painful emotions.
yeah,
They'll always be there. They're never going to go away.
right. And I think that if she leaves and she goes and lives with her girlfriend, like number one for the financial aspect, like I don't doubt that this girl's gonna go to med school and excel. Like she said she wanted to do this for her whole life. Like she's gonna make money. She's gonna be financially stable. That she doesn't need to worry about that right now. If she needs to go live with her girlfriend and then work part-time or something, like you'll figure it out. You're so young, like you're not, like you really will figure it out. If besides that, like if the risk here is her parents, I think that honestly, if she leaves and explains to them, maybe she writes them a letter, maybe she really just tells them, hey, like I love you and I'm doing this because I love you, because this is not working right now.
Right. Well, I think that's where keeping the communication open while also setting the boundaries of, I have to do this for myself. This is my life. I have to make these decisions, but I want you to be a part of it. And I want to bring you along for these feelings and these emotions that I'm having. But you have to understand that these are my boundaries.
And in a way, like she's given this a chance already. She's lived at home. She deals with her parents, and she's brought up things that like her parents like talk about her brother's girlfriend all the time, and that's a whole nother topic. Like how do you handle that with your sibling getting attention, not you, and all these things that are extra glamour. I don't know the word. Like they're
glorified.
In the household,
right?
And in my situation, like the reason I grew so much is because I took that time from my parents. I took that space from them. I didn't go home for holidays. There was times where I didn't talk to my dad for like a year.
Right.
Like a full year, basically.
Yeah.
That was the most painful experience of my life, but that is what allowed me to get to the point I am right now, where I can go home. And I actually, I just went home for my sister's graduation party, and we had a great time. My dad is still doesn't talk about you, but my relationship with him has mended a little bit, right? And that's because I mended my relationship with myself first. And I think that is the key here.
Right.
And whatever way that she can do that, and I don't know if it's...
I get what you're saying right now. You can't put others before you in this situation. She can't put her parents before she puts her needs. Because at the end of the day, in order to excel, whether that's in your dream, your aspirations of being, a doctor in the medical field, you have to put yourself first, because that's who you're with at the end of the day. That's who's by your side, and that's who's going to help you keep moving forward. And you can't, the alternative is you have to think about, well, what's the risk of not leaving and of staying home? That could potentially be a lot of other things that come with that. So I think balancing the risk of both of these things, and I think like we said, like, I think you know your answer. It's just something that is going to have to, you have to have the courage to be honest with yourself, and that takes time.
Yeah, I think another really important thing, a really important thing to remember is that your parents don't mean a lot of the shit they're saying to you right now in these phases. My parents had some mean stuff, and didn't mean that. That was
Right.
just their own fear and confusion. The reason this matters is because our brains have tendencies to create the worst case scenarios with any situation. And I imagined, like, literally, I used to think that, like, my parents would never talk to me again. They would cut me off. They would, like, disown me. And then what do you know? Like, I go home now and everything's fine. Obviously, every parent's different, but the point here is that she might leave and her parents might make these threats and they might not follow up through with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
People say this out of control and out of
Right.
fear, but when
Right.
you are no longer in their presence and they start to miss you and they're like, oh my God, like, what happened? Like, our daughter, like, we love her, like, what happened? And I think you start seeing that love, I think, starts resurfacing when you have that space and distance from each other, because you're not overcome by the resentment and the anger anymore. You have time to process your own emotions, and that's what I think what her parents need.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to be able to have the space to process your own emotions, and from her perspective and from her parents' perspective. That's when change happens, is when you're able to process your own emotions.
Yeah, definitely. So I think, like, if I was, I mean, we are talking to her right now, I would tell her that I think that she should do whatever means that she will be able to feel the feeling she needs to feel and grow in the way that she needs to grow, because that is what's the foundation to her future right now, to her happiness and to her mental health. She needs to prioritize that, and I understand the love that she has for her family. I can totally get that. I love my parents so much, but they will come around, and even if they don't come around, like, what matters, she's gonna have that strong foundation for herself because she took this time for herself.
Right. Taking that risk for yourself.
Right, which would enable her to build her mental health the way that she needs and to get to that place she needs to be in life, and set her up to have this, like, this. I think the point is here is, like, if she leaves and lives alone, she's gonna finally be able to, like, be happy with her girlfriend, and that really is what she needs here. She has to be able to freely express herself. She has to be able to feel seen and validated, and she's just not getting that in her house right now.
Right. And I know the big part of the beginnings of a relationship, when you would go home and then you would come back, it was always very scary because I didn't know what emotional state you were going to be in. And, like, luckily we would be able to talk through it and work through it and sit in those feelings and in the moment. And I think that, how hard would that have been without being able to come home and talk to me?
Yeah.
And have someone who understands.
Yeah. She needs that space to process her feelings.
And I do think that it's easy to forget that you haven't that option, to think that I can't do this and I can't do that. I'll never be able to do this. And I think that that's not something that should hold you back, because you're capable and worthy and deserving of having a full life, and whatever means it takes for you to get there. It's something that you deserve to take that risk.
And just because you can't comprehend what your life's going to look like if you take that risk does not mean that you can't take that risk and be happy. I could never have imagined what it would look like a year from when I told my parents that I would actually be happy, that I'd actually be okay, that I'd be loving my girlfriend, I'd be fine. And that's because, like, I just couldn't visualize that. But it happened.
Right. Just because you can't feel something right now doesn't mean you won't be able to feel that in 6 months.
Right. And I think what matters is not even that you could visualize that happiness, but what you know is that what your gut's telling you, that where you are right now is not right. And that there's something else out there that you have to do. Right.
Yeah. And I think being able to just have that perspective and that being able to take that jump or that leap and that risk and trust yourself, there's so much that will come from that. Not to say there's not going to be pain and difficulty, but one is always going to outweigh the other.
I just another thing I just want to touch on quickly. So, like, if she does tell her parents, right, I just want to talk about, like, what kind of advice we can give her when she does approach her parents and she tells them, like, I'm gonna go live with my girlfriend. I think number one, going to any conversation like that, you need to give yourself permission to be vulnerable, and you have to really build up your own self-worth before that, so you know that no matter what they say to you, they're saying it because they're scared. They're saying because they love you,
Right.
and that your worth is that, like, you deserve everything in the world, and you kind of have to lay that foundation before going to this conversation, so you're not as malleable to be knocked back over, right?
Of course. Or be swayed.
Or be swayed.
Right.
I think that's number one. And number two, it's like the expectation of when she tells her parents is not for them to say, like, oh, okay, great, like, we support you, but is that like that she's just telling them and they know how she feels, like that she is so vulnerable to them, and maybe she writes them a letter, maybe she just cries to them. I don't know what her means of communication are with them, but having them have that knowledge her when she leaves of her true pain, if she can word that and communicate that in words to say that you are making me feel all these things in a way that's not aggressive or defensive.
Or one of them saying, like, it's always been my dream to be a doctor, and it's getting to a point now where in the relationship that we have and the way that you won't accept it, it's getting in the way of this aspiration that I want for myself. And I'm sure her parents also want that for her. And just being able to communicate that this is starting to get in the way of my well-being and my ability to accomplish these things.
By the way, they said to her, like, you can't go see your girlfriend because that's having fun when you're supposed to be studying. Like, they clearly want her to be this doctor that they dream her of. They just don't envision it with this quote unquote, as my mom used to say, this lifestyle she's chosen.
Right. And that's just a massive lack of understanding.
It's all misunderstanding. It's lack of knowledge. Like, my mom literally used to say, like, Sophie's lifestyle she picked, and now she's literally coming over this weekend to have breakfast with us before we go on our trip. Like,
yeah,
that is what happened. That was a shift,
right,
in understanding and knowledge.
And we didn't ever think that was going to happen.
You will be surprised. You really will. We are all humans. Our brains kind of operate in the same way. We process our emotions the same way. People change with time.
They do. And you have to give people the grace to change when it gets to that point. If that's something that you're capable of doing emotionally.
I think, like, one takeaway that I kind of have, and maybe you can give yours, is it's just a reminder that I really want her to know that no matter how much pain that you experience throughout this process, that does not mean that you're not going to be the happiest person and be in the happiest relationship and have the happiest life you could ever have, because sometimes pain is a prerequisite and pain lays the foundation for growth. I saw it in my own life. I truly experienced the most pain I ever have in my life, and I truly am the happiest I've ever been in my life.
I understand that, and I think that when you're going through pain, expectations are very low, and you totally forget the high expectations of how high life can feel and how good it can feel, and when you are able to get out of that hole, you're reunited with this joyous feeling, and it just feels like you're feeling daylight for the first time.
Yeah, and I think, like, on that, it's like the reason I healed truly is because I allowed myself to feel the grief, the sadness, the anger, the resentment, all those feelings. I didn't say one was better than the other. I realized that all my feelings, I had to feel them, I had to process them, I had to cry, I had to journal.
Right.
And it's because I processed those feelings is that it allowed me to move on and to grow.
You can't sweep those things under.
You can't hold them in, and you can't label them as bad. That is like,
I think, and this is definitely hard to hear. It's unfortunate, but you have to take accountability for the pain that your parents are causing you.
What do you mean?
So what you just said, it took you journaling, going through all the emotions, feeling this, feeling that, feeling all the emotions that you possibly can in order for you to feel happy.
Right.
So
that's not to say you're not to say that you're responsible for your parents' emotions.
Not at all. You're responsible for the emotions they evoke in yourself.
Right. The way that
and that's a burden on you, and that's not fair, but it's something that I feel like you have to unfortunately accept because you deserve to be happy. And we all, often people get things put on them that they don't deserve. But at the end of the day, when it happens to you, it is your account. It is your responsibility to work through those things, and you can. And my point in saying that is you have to establish boundaries with these people in your life, whether it's your parents or someone else, in order to, give yourself these things that you need.
Yeah. And I think on that note, I remember so vividly feeling like I am so angry I have these feelings because I didn't ask for this. I'm not doing anything wrong. And just because you are working through the pain that your parents inflicted onto you does not mean that they're right, that you did something wrong. You are just dealing with the dealt of cards that you did not ask for. But the reality of it is, like, dealing with those and dealing with those emotions is you, unfortunately, you need to. You just need to. And that is going to make you a stronger person, resilient. Like, I know for a fact right now, and I know that our listener is going to be able to get through anything in life because she's getting through this. It builds that foundation of resilience, and that makes you so much stronger than a lot of other people in this world.
Yeah, I think it's an important thing to say because it can feel really difficult, but there is a positive to it.
Yeah, this is an emotional conversation. I mean, it makes me, I really, really feel for her. I really do. Like, I really do care. I really want whatever is going to make her happy because she deserves, and every person deserves on this earth and this planet to live true to himself, to live authentically, to know what it feels like to walk on the street with whoever they love and feel validated for that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and I really do believe she's gonna have that. And you want to know why? Because she is writing to us. She's reaching out to people. She is trying to navigate this. And that is hard, but I give her a lot of props.
I give her so much credit. It's a scary thing to do, and she's navigating it. She's doing it. She's going to figure it out.
We believe in you. We support you. We really are rooting for you, and you know where to find us. You know how to get in contact with us, and we hope this is helpful. And
if you have any other questions or follow-up thoughts, please reach out to us.
Well, I'll reach out to her and let her know or in the episode. But to anyone else out there who's going through something similar, if you're going through something different, like, it's so important to talk about this stuff. It's so important for people to know they're not alone. There's validation out there. People care about you.
Not alone. Definitely
not alone. Like, the point of this podcast is so people understand that everyone's going through so many similar things in life, and that people out there have made it, and you too will make it. You too will find that happiness. And I don't know. So I don't know. I really do. I do believe that she is going to get to the place she needs to get to.
Absolutely. She will.
But until then, keep your head up high, believe in yourself, write down those affirmations, because it's the little things that count, and those are the things that are going to get you through.
So again, everyone, please write out any questions you have to us. We're happy to answer them and put thought into them and give responses. And, we'll close out here by saying thank you so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you